These books right here, I'm just not sure why more people are not raving about these books. These are fun, exciting, dark, super well-told stories, and each one of them is so unique. What's up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. In this video today, I just want to talk about these books because they are some of the coolest books I've ever read, and I never see very many people talking about them. One thing about myself as a reader that I have learned over the last couple of years is that the more unique a story, the more I appreciate the creativity of the entire thing. A lot of my favorite books are just so in their own category, like there's not a lot of things like them, and these fall into that spectrum. So let me get into the very first book, which is The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. And I read this book a handful of years ago now, and it, I swear, has not left my mind at all. The funny thing about this is that I remember picking it up because of the cover, and because the cover was pink with a girl on it, I completely thought it was going to be a romance story. The drip of blood that's woven throughout her braid completely went over my head because I did not notice it at all. However, the fun part is that this became one of my all-time favorite books very easily. This story takes place in a county where the men believe that women harvest magic. They believe that when a young woman turns 16, that is the year that her magic manifests itself, and it's considered a dangerous thing. So the tradition that they have is called the Grace Year. The 16th year is their Grace Year, and all of the girls turning 16 that year are banished away into the wilderness for an entire year so that they can release their magic into the wild and they can come back purified and ready for marriage. It's definitely very dystopian, but it also has a lot of elements of a thriller, and this book is just a wild ride. You follow the main character named Tierney, who goes out on her Grace Year as she's turning 16. She goes with a group of women, and the only thing that they know about the Grace Year is that not everyone comes back alive. But as far as like what goes on while they're there, it's forbidden to talk about. So even the women that have gone before them, like older sisters or their mothers, are not allowed to tell them anything about what to expect during that year, and you kind of get a behind the scenes view as the reader of what really does take place, and it's absolutely wild. Like I said, I read this one a long time ago, and to this day I have not found anything that is similar to the storyline or to the vibe that the book gives. It is just such a great book. I highly recommend this one. The next book I have is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown, and this book is another one that I just never see people talking about, and it deserves so much freaking hype. In this book, we follow the main character named Cassie, who works in a New York City bookstore. She shelves books, she makes coffee for the customers, and she has one customer who is her favorite. He comes in all the time, and he's just a nice, lonely, charming old man, and they've built a little bit of a friendship together. However, one day he's there in the store, and she notices something is not right, so she goes over to see how he's doing and finds that he is no longer breathing. However, upon passing away, the book in front of him that he was reading is not alone. There is also a second book there, and it turns out that it is a little book that he left for Cassie. There was a note in it that promises Cassie that any door is every door. Soon enough, Cassie discovers that the book is magical. It really does turn any physical doorway into another part of the world. As long as she can imagine where she's going, the door will take her there. The discovery is absolutely amazing for her, but there is a small circle of people out there in the world that know the book exists, and they will do absolutely anything to get their hands on it. This book, I felt like this book had everything that you could possibly want. It had emotion in the story. It had such a creative take on magical realism. It had a lot of thrill as the people are trying to like chase her down. It had the perfect amount of good guys and bad guys. The bad guys were done so well, and at times it even like dipped into like, I would say, the horror genre, where things just got crazy with how far people were willing to go in order to get their hands on this book. It was so much fun. It's also not the only magical book out there, so put that into the mix and you just have an extremely fun and adventurous and emotional book. I can't believe more people don't talk about this one. I honestly thought it was freaking phenomenal. The next one is called The Quiet Wife by J.M. Cannon. If you know me, you probably have heard me talk about this author before. One of my favorite authors. Every single thing that they write just does not miss, and I'm just such a huge fan. So you follow a woman named Katie, and Katie is married, but she's 36 and didn't quite make it in life the way she expected to. She has always wanted to be a journalist, and she's pretty much spent a lot of her years like looking for that big break, that big story that never really came her way. However, it may be presented to her when she finds out that there is this community that this rich man has built way out in the Colorado mountains, and he's built this community of homes, and the point of the community is for people to move there and leave absolutely everything behind and kind of build a new community of people who want to escape reality. They want to escape like the craziness of the world. They want to escape the technology that's advancing so quickly. This place is for people that want to just get back to their roots, back to the basics, and make authentic connections with their neighbors in this new community. When she learns about this community, she also learns about some mysterious connections that the community may or may not have to some girls that had gone missing in the past. So what Katie wants to do is convince her husband that they should buy a home and move into this new community so that she can investigate this potential story from the inside. I've read quite a bit of thriller books and nothing quite like this one. This was just a really good time. It was very mysterious. I was very suspicious of all of the characters. I did not see the twist coming. I just thought this was so good. It had a very sinister vibe to it, and I can't recommend this one enough. The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. This was such a different book. So the very first sentence of this synopsis is what made me want to read it. Actually, it's the first two sentences. And it says, "Meet Chrissy. Chrissy is 8 and she has a secret. She has just killed a boy. The feeling made her belly fizz like soda pop." Right then and there, I knew that this book was gonna be like very dark and sinister, but I was not expecting it to pack the emotional punch that it did. You follow Chrissy in her year of being 8 years old, where at home she is very much neglected. There's never any food. There is certainly never any love. And Chrissy is kind of running around the neighborhood, and she is obviously searching for that love from anyone that would be willing to give it to her. And unfortunately for an 8-year-old child who just doesn't know how to understand what they're feeling, doesn't know why they're feeling what they're feeling, she ends up doing some really questionable things. And as an 8-year-old child, it's just so eye-opening to the trauma that she's going through. You follow a second timeline in this book, so you also follow Chrissy 20 years later, where she's living in hiding under a changed name because she doesn't want anyone to connect her back to her childhood years. And in this timeline, she now has a daughter of her own. This book was tense and addicting. It really was thought-provoking in so many different ways. It was entertaining, of course, but it was also very emotional. And I was absolutely shocked when I found out that this was this author's very first book. I could not believe it. I thought this was extremely well done, and there's truly just nothing like it. The next one that I have is a horror book, and this is one of the most unique books I've ever read. I could not put this one down. You follow the story of a man named Jared who has a wife and 3 young kids, and he is currently dealing with some issues that are causing him to consider, am I suffering from schizophrenia like my father did before me? Or am I being haunted by something I can't see? Jared gradually starts to suffer from night terrors and hallucinations and has a very hard time differentiating between what's real and what's not. As those issues for him get progressively worse throughout the entire story, you as the reader start kind of feeling that dread of, is this real or is he just freaking out in his head? The one thing that I love to say about this book is that it has a part 1 and a part 2. When you get to part 2, the point of view switches to a different character, and it is the coolest point of view switch / part 2 of a book I have honestly ever read. It completely puts the story in an entirely new perspective and spins it into something that like you would never be able to guess that's where it's going. And I thought this book was just so extremely well written, especially for a horror book. It did all the things it was supposed to do by giving you like that questionable dread and that uneasiness of not being able to figure out what's really going on in the plot. And I thought that it had a completely perfect ending. Like, that's really all I'll say about it, because obviously I don't want to give away anything that might ruin the story for someone, but this is a fan-freaking-tastic book. The last book I have is Don't Tell Me How to Die by Marshall Karp. And the reason why nobody is talking about this book yet is because it's not released. However, let me convince you to add this to your TBR for when it does release, March 4th. I read this book at the end of 2024 after I had already done like my top 10 books of the year, my favorites, blah, 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 blah. And this book easily squoze its way into a spot in my top favorite books of the year, but also of all time. In this book, we follow Maggie. Maggie has a great job. She has a great husband. They have 2 kids who are also just great, but Maggie has just been diagnosed with a terminal illness that is only going to give her about 3 months left to live. Now, when Maggie was younger, in her teenage years, her and her sister went through a similar situation when they found out that their mother was diagnosed with the same disease, and she only had a few months left to live as well. The book follows Maggie on these 2 separate timelines, and the way the book is set up is absolutely genius for the laying out of the story. For example, one chapter will say 16 years before the funeral. Then the very next chapter will say 1 week before the funeral. You're taken on a complete journey through Maggie's teenage years and adult years, and I swear everything comes perfectly full circle. The characters in this book are all absolutely amazing, and each one plays such an important role to the plot. This book is hilarious. It had some absolutely brilliant, snarky humor, and I resonated with that so very much. This book had incredible amounts of emotion, just raw emotion in the characters. Like I said about the jumpy timeline, it is absolute perfection, and I felt like this book was written like a Kristen Hanna book, and in my eyes, Kristen Hanna can do no wrong. She writes perfect novels, and this book felt like she wrote it, but it was a thriller. So while you're having all of that laughter and emotion and just like life thoughts and all of this amazing stuff to really make you feel, in the last like 30% of the book, it gets extremely thrilling, twisty, sinister, and just overall like that whole aspect of everything I love in a thriller book. This delivers like no other. Hands down, one of my all-time favorite books. This was so much better than I expected it to be. I can't say enough good things. So that's all I have for this video, you guys. I want to know if anyone has read any of these books. I want to know what you thought of them. I swear I just don't see enough people talking about these books on any bookish social media, and they just all deserve so much more hype. If you haven't read any of these yet and you put any of them on your TBR, please come back and let me know what you thought of them, because I just love it when we all love the same books. It's the best feeling. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.